Hello, this is Michelle with Artful Possibilities. Thank you for joining me for this free acrylic painting tutorial of this wonderful winter day with the little red birds. So this is a really cute original design of mine. It's whimsical. Let me zoom in so you can see these cute little birds. Aren't they so cute? I'm really into cute and whimsical, and hopefully you're going to enjoy this. Let me go back out. Okay, so I'm using acrylic paints today. I have some different brands, but I am transitioning into Liquitex Basics acrylics. They come in a tube like this and different sizes, and they're readily available everywhere. But I am using up some other brands today that I have. I'm going to call out the colors for you. I have ultramarine blue, titanium white, burnt umber, Mars black. This red is actually an Artist Loft crimson, but any nice true red that you have will be great. This is actually, it's an orange color, but it is cadmium orange hue by Liquitex, but any orange, that bright orange that you have will work. And this here is cadmium yellow light hue, but any bright yellow, primary yellow, anything like that that you have would work great. So this is our end result goal, and we're going to start right here on this little canvas. This is an 8 by 10 canvas. I'm using assorted brushes also, so I'm going to use this large flat for the background, and then I have a smaller flat, which is about a ½ inch or so, and I have a round that comes to a point. I have a kid's scruffy brush. It's kind of a worn out brush. Actually, this one has flat bristles at the bottom. The ones that are more worn out start to look more like this. They have more of a rounded end. I usually joke that you can't buy them like this. You have to earn them by painting. So I also have a couple of rounds, pointed brushes. You'll see sometimes they might look like they don't come together, but when you wet them and then pull them over your paper towel, you can get a nice point usually. And that's for the little details like the eyes. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I always wet my brush first in my water, and then I touch it on my paper towel. Okay, and I'm going to grab some white and some ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to start painting. Now, the motion that I use for the brush is, I call it slip slap, but what it is, it's the motion of an X. I'm going to do it slow to show you, but you actually stroke them one over the other and you let them overlap. And I just keep going into the blue, the white, till I kind of get a look that I like. Now we are most likely going to do 2 layers or 2 coats on this. I don't want the right side darker, so I want to definitely get a little more white up in there. I'm going to be having a light source up in that upper right corner, the sun. Alright, so I'm going to want that to dry. If you want your edges to be the same color as the painting, I recommend painting them while you paint the front. Okay, that way if you get paint up around the front like this, you can just wipe it while it's wet, okay, and not end up getting big smudges all over. So I just put my pinky in some paint. You'll find that you might get your hand in paints, and if you're like me, I'm a messy painter. That happens to me all the time. But as long as it's not wet, it won't cause you any harm on the painting. So I'm going to grab some more ultramarine blue and get a little more blue up in that sky. But typically, in order to get it to stick, you really do have to blow dry it a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the blow dryer and just give this a little bit of drying time. So while I'm drying this, I'll put this painting here for you to take a look at. Okay, I'm just going to blow dry. All right. Here we go. Okay, now you'll see where it's not solid, not very solid, and you can see lots of brush strokes. I'm going to go ahead and rectify that by putting in some more paint. So I'm going to wipe my brush. I'm going to grab a lot of white for that upper right hand corner because that's where I'm going to be painting the sun. So I want it to be a little bit lighter there. And as I put this second coat on, and when I want the colors to blend, I use a very, very light touch on the brush, like using a feather duster on fine china, how you would have such a light touch. You want to have that light touch. If you stick your pinky out a little bit, I think it helps. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and keep adding ultramarine blue plus white. Now I do want the sky to look blue because we're going to add some snow, and we definitely want that to show up. But you'll see that this second layer really gives the background a solid color. Okay, now if you want it to look like you have some little clouds up there, you could just grab a little bit of white on your brush like that and just kind of tap some in and just leave like a lighter spot. But remember, our tree's going there, so a lot of that won't show. So I'm leaving the bottom of this more white because I'm going to create a little snowy hill in the background. Okay, so I'm just going to rinse this brush a little bit. And I'm going to take mostly white. I've got a little something there. There we go. Okay, so you can make this hill bumpy or smooth, whatever you'd like. And I want it to kind of come down a little bit. Okay. When you're painting with acrylic, you might see a little tiny piece of paint. If you can see this, where is it? See this piece right here? This little tiny fleck. Acrylic tends to spit out little pieces of hardened paint like that. So just, you know, all you have to do is just go like this, grab it with your brush, wipe it on your paper towel. It's going to happen. Even if your paint is new, sometimes it happens. Okay, so I'm just making some interest here. I think I'll make the hill go up a little bit. Okay, now this is going to be in the far background because our tree is in the foreground. Okay, all right, so while that's drying, it's very humid here today, even though the air conditioning is on. In January, it's very humid, so I'll probably be using the blow dryer a lot. So I'm going to dry that. While I'm drying that, I'll put this down for you to be taking a good look at. All right, here we go. We are ready to draw our tree. So what I would like is to just use a regular pencil and just a very light touch, and I'm going to draw the tree down here on the left, and it's going to come all the way to the bottom of the canvas because it's in the foreground. It's not like up on top of the hill. Okay, so I'm just going to come in and I'm going to give myself a lightly sketched line. I'm hoping you can see some of that. And I want some area on the left side of the tree also. I want some sky. So I'm just going to come down and make the other line. And as I come down, I'm just going to flare it out a little bit. Okay. Now, I want to have a branch that comes out to the right. And it's actually, the bottom of the branch is probably just about a little below the halfway of that 8-inch, and then the top of the branch is going to be here. Okay, so I'm going to come in and I'm just going to lightly draw. I want that branch to run right off the canvas. And here's the top, and I'm going to have some bumps in it and have it come down a little. And then have it narrow out. So hopefully you can see that enough. Okay, there's lots of ways to apply patterns, and we'll talk about that in a future post, a future video, but for today we're drawing everything freehand. Okay, so up here I'm going to have another branch, and it comes out just a little above. I'm going to do it like this one. It comes out just a little above this branch, and then it goes up and out and off the top of the canvas. Okay, so we're going to start here, and I'm going to go upward and go up off the canvas, and then I'm going to create the rest of it here. On the left side I want another limb, but I want it to be kind of reaching upwards, so right about here I'm going to draw another branch going up. Okay, I'm not looking for symmetry or anything. I'm just looking for something that looks interesting. The little branches will do freehand, okay, with a tiny brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to base coat this tree right now with burnt umber. This burnt umber from Liquitex Basics is a beautiful, creamy, rich paint. I love it. So what I'm going to do is just get one base coat on. Now keep in mind this is a tree, so it's okay for it to end up bumpy. We're going to want it to be bumpy and look a little bit like bark. We don't necessarily want it to be perfectly smooth. So as you're painting it, if you get some brush strokes in there, you might want to leave them. Okay. Now when I'm painting, I like to turn my canvas around different directions. Depending whether you're right-handed or left-handed, your dominant hand comes in from one side easier than the other, and it might be easier to just go ahead. Like for me, I'm right-hand dominant, so the right branches are easier for me. The left branches, sometimes I might want to turn my painting upside down to do those. Okay. Now if you have pencil that shows, as long as there's no paint over it, it will erase later. But if you have any paint over it, it won't erase, so keep that in mind. So I am using this medium-sized flat brush, and I'm making the branch wider where it comes out of the tree, and I'm holding the brush sideways, and as the branch goes up and off the canvas, it's going to become more narrow. There's a pencil line here that I'm going to erase later, but not until my painting is dry. Okay, so here's my horizontal branch. Now this is the branch that the little birds are going to be sitting on. So I definitely want to just put the bottom, the main branch on, but I don't want to add any of the smaller twigs till I know where my birds are sitting. So I'm going to turn this upside down to come in and do the bottom part of the branch. Now again, branches are not perfectly smooth. Okay, and then I'm going to follow the line that I made and just kind of gently bring that right off the canvas. Okay, now when you get to the edge of a canvas, it's up to you. If you want to paint around the edges, you can. So let me just show you an example. If I was going to do that, this branch, I would continue with the angle that you would imagine it to have. Okay, same thing over here. Now I'm not going to paint mine. I'm going to do mine black, but just to show you, I would continue to bring this up on an angle like this, so that when it hangs on the wall, your design will continue. Okay, so that's only if you are painting your design around your edges. I'm just going to wipe that. Okay, I chose to do mine in black, which is a step I'll show you later. Okay, so it's perfectly acceptable to do whatever you please. This is your creation, so you want to please yourself. Okay, all right, so that looks good. While that's drying, I'm going to come over here and work on the sun. I have a little ridge in my paint, and that's actually okay too because it's the bark of a tree. While that tree's wet, I have a dirty brush, right? It's full of burnt umber, and I'm just going to wipe it a little, but I want that burnt umber, and I'm going to come over here and just grab a little bit of black. I had plenty of burnt umber in my brush, but if not, just take a little black. And then what we're going to do is down the left side of the tree. Now mine is actually not super heavy with paint, so I'm able to do it right now. Down that left side, I'm going to add that brown plus black. And you can come in and do some uneven lines like that, which is going to help you create a bark look. Okay, isn't that fun? So I'm going to grab a little more, and this branch is going to be away from the sun, so I'm actually going to make this branch darker here. It's behind the tree, so I'm going to add that on top. Okay, there we go. Okay, so while we're doing that, if your tree is super wet at this point, you could go ahead and blow dry it, or you could just go ahead and work on the sun, which I'll be doing in a moment. But mine is at a good point right now. I'm going to grab some more of that color, and I'm just going to put some at the back end of the branch where it touches the tree. Okay, and I'm just going to blend that by just drawing it over to the right like this. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to add some black to the bottom of this branch. Okay, I'm going to wipe off, grab a little bit more burnt umber to put up in the top. Okay, and then right here I'm just going to blend a little bit. Okay, so I'm liking that, and I'm going to get this branch. Again, I'm just going to come over here and grab some of that mixture, put it here, and then as I bring it out on the branch, I'm going to turn my brush sideways, so I'm just using the narrow chisel edge. I'm going to get a little bit in here, but I'm actually going to put highlight here because the sun is going to be hitting that. So I'm going to rinse my brush. I really don't want darkness right here, so I'm going to remove that, get a little more burnt umber, kind of smooth that out. There we go. Okay, so I don't really want to put in a lot of little branches yet till I get my birds drawn on there. I see I got a little fleck of brown. Let's see if I can take that off. If not, that'll end up being, whoops, a good spot for a little branch. So I'm just using some water on a clean brush, and I'm getting that little dot off. There. I might not have wanted that dot there later, so And I splashed some water. I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm just going to absorb that. Now it looks like there's a white spot there, but I believe it will just dry okay. It's just wetness. All right. So the branches are looking pretty good. I do want to put some highlight in, but I'm going to work on the sun first, and then we'll keep moving. All right. All right, so in this upper right corner is where I want to create the sun. All right, I'm going to move this over this way a little bit so you can see everything a little better. All right, so I have this kid's scruffy brush, okay, and I'm just going to kind of pounce it on my paper towel a little bit. I'm going to grab some white, and my paper towel is pretty wet right here, so you can pounce on your palette or an additional paper towel. I just want some white, but I don't want the brush to be super wet. And up in this upper right corner, I'm just going to rub my brush in a circular motion. Now these brushes are designed, I say they're for kids, but I'm a big kid. I'm a kid at heart. So I love these brushes for so many things. So there we go. It's nice and white there. Now if you wanted it to be more of a night scene, you could leave it as a moon, but I'm going to add yellow, okay? I'm going to let that white set up though. I'm going to just lay this brush down. I wouldn't normally do that, but we're going to use it again in a moment. Okay, so this is fairly dry right here, but not super dry. So you know what? I'm going to hit it with the blow dryer again a little bit because I want to show you something fun next. All right, I'll put that there for you to see, and I'm going to dry this. All right. Okay, here we go. So on this original, what I did, you see how I have these really big snowflakes. That's what they're supposed to be. You know, when you look through a camera lens, if you had a lot of snow falling, some of the ones that fall right in front of your lens would look really, really big. So I was trying to create that in a whimsical way. So how I did that was I turned to one of my favorite tools, which is a circle dauber. That's what I call them. People call them all different things. They usually come on a handle. This one was actually a styrofoam insert for, not styrofoam, but foam that holds bottles, and I was able to save the inserts for this. So look around you, you might have some tools that you can use. You could also just paint in a circular motion, again with this scruffy brush, but I'm going to use this. Now typically when I do this, when I use these, I use them dry, but for this project I want my snowflakes, those big ones, to be sort of subtle. So I'm going ahead and I wet this and I squeezed it out. And what I'm going to do is dip into my white, and then I'm going, let's move this up. I'm going to press and turn on my palette. Now see how I didn't get the entire sponge covered? I want to make sure that I do. So I'm going to keep pressing and turning and twisting till I'm satisfied that I have the entire tip of the sponge covered. Then I'm going to get a little bit of blue, maybe a little more than that, and I'm just going to press and twist till my blue gets lighter. Okay, and then I'm just going to do the same thing on my canvas. I'm going to put my sponge down and make sure the entire sponge touches the canvas, the entire bottom surface. And I'm going to gently press and twist. So I'm going to put it down, gently press, twist, and lift. That's pretty bright, but that's okay. And I want one running off the side. And I might just come in here and do a few more. I'm going to try to make it look like the original for you, but it doesn't matter. Just kind of have fun with it. Now, I didn't do this everywhere because these were just supposed to be like the close-up snowflakes. And again, this is very whimsical. I love whimsy. So if you do, you might want to do this step. I think I need to reload just a little bit. So I'm reloading with some more blue and white. You always want to mess with this on your palette like I'm doing. You don't want to dip and go right to your canvas, or you might have way more paint than you bargained for. Okay, and then let's see. I'll do a few more and maybe one here. Let them overlap a little bit too. I think that that adds interest, and I like to run some off the bottom and the sides. Okay, just kind of have fun with it and do what you like. Okay, now over here, I want to put one, but I don't necessarily want it to be on the front of the tree. I got my finger right in there. So there's a couple ways you could do this. You could just put the circle on and then clean it off the tree, or you could have put the circles on before painting the tree. But what I'm going to do is just get a little piece of paper. And I'm just going to cover the tree right there. And then I'm going to take my sponge and I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of them over here. And oops. I'm going to lift my paper. And they're behind the tree. However, I did get a little bit of white there. So I'm just going to come in with a clean brush. And I'm going to wipe that white paint away off of the tree. Okay. Super cute. Now I'm kind of wanting one over here too. So let's go in. I'm going to try not to get it all over the tree. Now, if you wanted, you could put those snowflakes actually in front of the tree. I just choose not to because I really want to show you how to highlight and everything and get that tree, you know, having some highlights and stuff. So I'm not going to put it in the front. All right, super cute. All right, I'm rinsing my brush. So now this area over here is pretty dry. No, I chose to make it kind of sunny if you look at this original. So it's up to you if you want to just leave it like that. But if you want to add some sun, I'm dipping in the yellow. And I'm just going to wipe most of it off. Now this is a very bright yellow. If you don't want it quite that bright, come on in and grab a little bit of orange. And I'm just going to pounce on my palette till I get a color that I like. Now these brushes are very inexpensive. And you may have experience with the bristles falling out. They are just meant to be fun craft brushes. So if that happens on your palette, it's very easy to get it off of there. So I'll show you that if it happens. So here we go. I'm just going to pounce a little bit in the center of where I want that sun to be. Now, this is not anywhere near as big as the other one yet, but let's see what happens. I'm going to wipe all that excess color off, and then I'm just ever so slightly going to rub just around that sun a little bit. My goal is to have kind of like a little glow without really having a harsh line. Okay, so you could come in and add more white if you needed to, but I'm happy with this, so I'm just going to kind of leave it like that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take this brush now. I have an additional water basin way over to the right, and I just stuck it in there for now because I don't want it to dry up and get ruined. So the next thing I'm going to do is draw the little birds, okay? And then we can finish our tree as we get our birds painted. So we'll keep going back and forth so areas can dry. All right, as this dries, I'm seeing that I have a little bit of an orange line there that might be a little more harsh than we want, so we're going to take care of that in a little while. All right, so here's a nice dip in the branch where a bird could sit. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to try zooming in for this drawing part and see how this works out for you. Okay, so right here in this little dip, I'm going to draw kind of like an oval, and it touches down into the branch. On top of that and over to the right, I'm going to draw a little circle for the head, and then I'm going to draw a wing here that comes out. Now if I made the bird a little higher, the wing would be more separated from the branch, but I didn't do that this time, so that's okay. I'm going to show you how to highlight. All right, so I erased the inside of the circle, and then I'm going to create a tail. Okay, there'll be a little beak here, but we can do that with paint. We don't really have to draw it. And then over to the right, I'm going to do the smaller bird. And again, it's going to be kind of like an oval shape and with a little circle, but the circle's going to be more to the left this time. And I'm going to point that wing out, and then I'm going to draw a little tail. Now I want to go in and erase that part of the circle body, and I'm going to put a little beak right here, but again, that can just be done with paint. Okay, now these tails are going to have a hard time showing up against the brown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this zoomed in. I'm going to take some white paint on my round brush, and I'm just going to paint the tail. I had some water in my brush, which was not intentional. So always keep like a paper towel handy. So if you get a little too much water like that, you can absorb it. Whenever you rinse your brush or add water, unless I specifically say keep the water on the brush, you always kind of want to touch it to your paper towel. Okay, so you've got your nice point, but you don't want lots of water because it will just run like crazy. So I'm going to paint this tail white. The only reason is so that the red and orange that we put on will be vivid. It won't be vivid up against that burnt umber if we don't get a base coat of white on it. So you want to smooth it out as best you can. All right, there we go. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more and move this over for you. Whoops, my pencil just rolled right into my paint puddle. So that's definitely something I want to clean up. I am a messy painter, that's for sure. Okay, so let's do this. We are going to paint just the heads for now with our red color. And it's probably going to require more than one coat. Just put it on and smooth it out as best you can. Now you might even want to turn your canvas around because it's easier to paint. I usually say under your point, and what I mean is it's easier to be on the opposite side of the smooth edge that you want to make. It would be really hard for me to paint this edge nice and smooth from this angle. So you want to turn your canvas around if that helps you. It really helps me. Okay, so we're going to do the head. And I'll do this head. Before I turn it around to get the other end, I'm going to go ahead and get this part of this wing and this part of this body. And there's a reason why I'm leaving those separations, and I'll show you in a moment. Okay, so I want the body to touch the head. These are going to be super cute. Okay, now I'm going to do the base of the wing. Now I'm leaving a little bit of separation in between the belly and the wing. You'll see why in a moment. I want a shade there, so let's see. All right. I'm going to do the top of the wing, but not all the way to the edge. So now on this one, on the left, I've left a little bit of space between the body and the wing. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the burnt umber, and right here on the belly where it touches the wing, I'm going to put in the burnt umber. I can see I didn't bring this color all the way down to where I drew the base of the belly, so all right. So a little more burnt umber. I'm just doing a little bit at a time. Up under the head, up against the body. Get that space filled in. I'm gonna wipe my brush. It's a little too much paint there. Okay, and I'm just going to tap it and kind of gently bring it onto the belly. Okay, so while I'm doing that, the tail's fairly dry. I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to get that red paint now, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a coat of red on that tail. Now it's going to show up a lot better than it would have if we didn't put the white down first. All right, now I'm going to wipe that brush. Before I go to the smaller bird, I'm going to highlight the top of this wing by dipping in my orange. I'm going to place that orange there. Just kind of tap it into the red. Now that is going to definitely need more coats. Okay, so we're going to keep coming back to these little birds. I'm going to lay some orange at the top of the head up to the right, because remember that's where the sun is. I'm just going to pat it a little and leave the rest of the head red. And I'm going to put a little bit on the belly. We'll come back to the wing in a while and the tail. Okay, so let's get on to this little bird while it's still wet. Okay, what we want to do is get in here and get the front of that belly painted red and the front of that head. Okay, so I want to shade now under this wing to make it pop forward. By shading in here, it helps bring this wing forward, okay? And we're going to do more highlighting, and you'll see more of that develop. On this side, same thing. I want to shade under the wing, so I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber. You don't want to use a lot of paint right now because these birds are pretty small. I'm just going to put some burnt umber in there and just kind of tap it so you can see the contrast between the burnt umber and the red. It's a little wet right now, but it will come more into play soon. I'm going to take a little tiny bit. When I say a little bit, it's about like this. Okay, it's not much. And I'm going to come up under that head. Okay. Rinse my brush. Whoops! Rinse my brush just a little bit. And now I'm going to dip in my orange paint. And again, see how much I have on my brush. It's not a lot. I'm going to get my orange on here on the top of the wing. And we just kind of have to let that dry before we can add more. You really can't rush that. If you try to add paint on top of wet paint, you're just going to be pushing wet paint around, and you're going to disturb the bottom layer that's trying to dry. So sometimes you just have to resist that temptation to do it all in one fell swoop. Okay. So while that's drying, I'm also going to paint this tail with one coat of the red. And again, use whatever red you have handy. There are so many shades of red. And we're going to highlight as much as we can with orange, because the thing about red is, for a lot of reds, when you add white to make it lighter, you end up with pink. And lots of times orange works a little better. So those birds are very wet right now, and you've probably noticed that wherever I touch it, like right here, I'm just disturbing that undercoating, and that's exactly what I was talking about. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. I actually really need to hit that with the blow dryer for a moment, and then we'll work on the branches and we'll come back to the birds. So here's the original to take a look at. You can take a close-up of those birds while I dry this. All right. Remove this. Put this back. Now where I had disturbed the base color there, I want to go ahead and get some more paint in there now while it's dry. So I'm using the orange. And I'm going to go ahead and put some more here also, the top of the wing. Just kind of blend it down in. Top of the head toward the right. The belly. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the red, a little tiny bit, and get some red in here too, because I've kind of obliterated a lot of the red. Alright, I'm going to grab a little red and just put more on the tails, just a little bit. Okay. While I'm at it, I'm going to put a little bit of orange at the bottom of this one's belly. And they're dry enough. I wasn't going to work on them right now, but seeing they're dry enough, let's go ahead. You'll probably want to have a blow dryer handy when you paint with acrylics. Where I live, it's very, very humid. So the only way that things dry quickly is if I have fans blowing and air conditioning blowing, and then once in a while it will dry more quickly than I want it to. All right. So that's looking cute. I've kind of lost the belly right here on this one. So I want to go ahead, I'm going to turn this upside down for a moment. And I want to come in and define this belly a little bit. So I'm going to take some orange, put it in there. I could add a little bit of white. Let's just do that a little tiny bit like this. I'm getting used to the camera. Okay, so just a tiny, tiny bit of white. There we go. So we don't lose that belly completely on the branch. We can do the same here with the little bit that's left on the brush. All right, looking cute. So here we go. I still have some color to repair here on this little wing. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just put my finger in a paper towel and just going to blot straight down and straight up. And I'm going to go back and making sure there's absolutely no moisture in this brush. I'm going to go back and just kind of tap in a little bit of the red. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off, tap in a little bit of the orange. Light, 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 light taps. Okay. Now while we're here, let's take a tiny bit of the burnt umber. All I did was touch my brush to my paper towel, so I still have a little bit of orange and red in there, but at the very top of the tail where it lays under the tummy, I want to add a little bit of the burnt umber. And what that does is it helps set that under the tummy. So I put it in, I'm wiping my brush on the paper towel and just kind of pulling down. Now right in here on a close-up you can see that there's some paint missing, so I'm going to come in and lay that in. Now keep in mind you're on a close-up zoom and things are going to show here that are not going to show when you have your painting up on your wall. But you can always go in with a tiny brush and fix any imperfection that you see. Even when you're all done, you can come back. So I'm adding a little bit of orange in here. Okay, you can also put just a tiny bit of white on your brush and blend it on your palette, and you can come in and just touch the tails a little bit. And do it here and here too, just to add a little bit of texture. Okay. Now as these colors dry, you're also going to see the highlights kind of fade in a little bit. Okay, so that's super cute. You can see some pencil line here on my baby bird. I'm going to go ahead and get that filled in a little better. Now you can also change to an even smaller brush if you have to. Okay. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. As I go, I'm always going to keep tweaking because that's just how I am. You can always keep going. There just comes a point where you have to say, okay, this is the way I want it. This is looking pretty good. Or you can keep going and you can keep working on it. You get a lot of time and pleasure out of one canvas. All right. So I'm going to take the tip of this brush and a tiny bit of orange also, and I'm just going to create a tiny like triangle for a beak. Okay, it's not really going to look like orange until it's dry and we get another coat probably, but okay, that's plenty. All right, they look really big because I'm zoomed in. All right, I'm gonna rinse that brush. Yay, super cute. All right, so let's go back to our tree. I'm going to zoom back out for you. And maybe just a little closer. Okay, so what we want, and it's actually happening even without us putting the paint in, I want this side of the tree to look like that sun is shining out on it. So we need to add a little bit more color there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our orange on this flat brush and we're going to add it on the right side of the tree. And just kind of take your brush and just kind of blend some in a little bit. We don't want perfect stripes because, you know, we want it to look like bark. So we're going to come in here, add some more orange, go across the tree a little bit. I don't want to put sun back here, okay, because I want this to look like it's a big tree and that it's rolling around and this side is in the shadow. Super cute. Okay. So now I want this, the sun would definitely be hitting the bottom side of this branch and the top side of this branch. So let's go in with some orange. Now this is fairly transparent. I'm calling it orange, but again, I'm going to show you what it is. It's the Liquitex Basics Acrylic Cadmium Orange Hue. Okay. And, all right, so let's just kind of blend that in a little. So we're keeping the sun at the bottom and keeping it darker up at the top. And on this bottom branch, we want to put the sun up at the top. And this is, anyway, I was saying before, it's fairly transparent. So as you lay it on there, I wipe it. If you have too much on your brush, just, you know, wipe it on your paper towel. And in here, it might not be quite as bright, because it's under that branch, but we'll put a little bit of sun in there. Okay, so I'm really liking that right now. You can also, you could use a burnt sienna, which is brown. I'm going to spin this around so I can get in here, because I can see that my paint isn't smooth right here, and I want to fix that. So I'm going to take some orange. I'm going to come in this way and get those little bumps in the canvas filled in with paint. Now that's a little bit bright on the orange, and if it's too bright, we'll come in and we'll glaze it. But let's see how we like that as it dries. The more contrast you have between your light and your dark, the more depth and dimension you're going to have when it's hanging on the wall. Okay, because you won't be close up then. And those contrasts are what gives you that depth, and you'll see the more you paint what I mean by that. Okay, all right, there we go. Adding some more sun there. Okay, so now we need some tiny little branches. It's just a couple things we need to do. My birds' heads are dry, so while they're dry, I'm going to go ahead and give them an eye. Now I do have a tiny little liner brush that you could use. You wet it in the water, and you always pull a brush over your paper towel with the grain. You don't want to bang down and scrub it. You just want to pull a fine brush like this across your paper towel. Now this brush is much larger, but if you look at the very tip, the actual tip is just about as fine as this fine brush. So if you have your brushes and you keep them in good condition, you don't have to buy every size. So I'm going to wet this and show you. I'm going to pull it over the paper towel, and I'm going to take, so there's no moisture left. It's wet, but it's formed and it's to a beautiful point, but it's not dripping at all. And I'm going to take just a tiny bit of black, and I mean a tiny little bit, and just on the tip of that, I'm going to zoom in for you. I'm going to just make a little eye, and on this one I'm going to just make a little eye, and that's it for now. We're going to add some highlight. Now when I look at this painting with the naked eye, I don't notice these lighter areas like I do when it's zoomed in on the camera. So you might see some of that on here, and then on your own painting you don't actually even notice that. But if you do, just keep coming in with a little bit of that matching color and make it more solid. Okay. I'm going to grab some little bit of orange here too. All right. Okay, so now those colors are actually drying pretty quickly. So while I'm here with this pointed brush poised so nicely, I'm going to come in and just add the tiniest little white dot on the eye. Okay, so we want the white to be much smaller than the black. And again, this all looks very exaggerated because I've zoomed in. All right, so we're going to go ahead and work on the little branches. Okay, and I want to keep them delicate. Okay, so I'm going to wet my brush, and I'm going to put it in the burnt umber and roll it on my palette. It's a little wet, so I'm going to touch it on my paper towel. And I want to fill this brush about 2/3 of the way up, and I roll it so it will come to a really nice point. And I'm going to pull some little branches, but I want them to be in the direction that the branch flows. So I'm going to show you this one. See how I've added some branches and they're finer. I always tell my students, when you're making a branch, think of the letter V or the letter Y. And you'll see this looks like a Y, you know, a Y. Even though one side might be longer than the other, that's the shape that you want, like a V or a Y, however you want to look at it. So in here, keep putting my knuckle in my paint palette. I'm going to push it over a little. Okay, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to run my brush in the direction of the branch, and I'm just going to come out with a little branch like that. Again, burnt umber. In here, I had some little bumps that I wanted to take care of, so I'm going to put another one. Now, I'm going to mix just a little bit of black with my burnt umber because I want these smaller branches to show up. So they're like little twigs. Now, I'm not looking for symmetry, so I don't want to just leave a bunch of branches that look the same like that. I'm going to come in and pull another one just a little bit longer. Now, no two of these are going to be exactly alike because they're freehand, and that's the beauty of it. Okay, these aren't prints that you can go into a craft store or a Walmart and just pick up a print. This is handcrafted creation. So there's a V, and I'm going to come in and make another branch there, V or a Y. And in here, I'm going to make another one. I need a little more black with that. Now you want to wet your brush, touch it on your paper towel, and then go back to your paint because you need your brush to be very moist to get it to flow. Now right here I need to be careful. Sometimes with branches you can easily make them look like a claw, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to make another random longer branch. Okay, that's good enough. I don't really want any more than that over there. I think I'm happy with that the way it is. I do want to put a little more shadow at the bottom of this one. Okay, same here. Make it a little darker where it comes off the tree. Okay, so we need something at the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and make like a kind of a larger branch. Okay, see how there was too much water there? I'll take the trusty paper towel and get it right then and there. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to let that dry. Up in here, let's grab a couple more branches here. So I'm going to come and just make a branch. I like that. That one's kind of interesting. It wiggles a little bit. And maybe off of that, I'm going to go ahead and just go up and make another piece of a little twiggy branch. Now you could really do a lot of branches and lots of twigs, but really it's a very simple small painting, and I don't want to take away from the birds. I just saw something I wanted to fix in here. All right, I'm liking that. So I think I would like another branch up in here. So the beauty of this too is you can always come in and add later. So let's go here. I don't want to go right here because I don't want to create symmetry in the branch. I want it to be interesting. I'm going to make this branch bigger. Okay, so you just keep playing with this and do whatever you'd like. You could add another branch in here if you want. All right, off of this one, I think I'm going to just leave that one alone. But you could add another branch if you wanted and one up here. But for now, I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm going to add some black in there. Okay. All right, I like that a lot. Now, one of the things that I like to do with the birds too is sometimes I put a point on their head. You see how on this one I put a point here and here? I just think they're super cute like that. It kind of makes them look like a cardinal. Again, this is Whimsy. So if you want to leave it like that, you can leave it. If you want to put a little point, you just come in and add a little point to the top of the head. This head is not very round right here, so I'm going to round that out a little bit. Like I said, you can keep playing and keep playing. Add some more orange in there, some red. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to add the point just to show you. I have a little bit of red, and I'm just going to come in here and add a little point. Now that does give them a cardinal look in a whimsical kind of way, but cardinals have black on their face too. So, you know, I'm just playing, just having some fun here. Super cute. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. I did mention earlier that there was a line right here that I wasn't crazy about. So if that happens, you can glaze a little bit of white there. So a glaze is really just some watered down color, and it's very, very light. So I'm going to clean my medium flat brush here, and I'm going to take a little bit of white and rub it into the water, touch it on my towel, and I'm just going, I could put a little more than that. I'm just going to glaze a little bit of white in here. And you know what? I'm going to just take that out like that. Okay. I'm going to just come back in and just tap a little bit of white in there too. Again, you can keep coming in till you get it how you want it. Okay. There's no right or wrong. This is Whimsy. All right, so one of the things that I like to do, and this is the final step other than the edges, which I will talk about briefly, I like to splatter. So splatter you can do with a toothbrush. There's all different ways you can do it. I like to use a round brush that's kind of worn out. Let me grab one. This one isn't super worn out and fluffy. I'm going to grab one that's even fluffier than that. Keep your old tools. As your brushes wear out, you can keep them because they're good for other purposes, okay? This one is nice and kind of fluffy and worn out, but it's great for flowers, and right now it's going to be good for snow. So I'm going to wet my brush in clean water. I'm going to put that water on my palette. This is just a disposable palette I'm using today. And I'm going to grab some white, put it in that water. So what I'm looking for is a consistency of ink or skim milk. Okay. And then I'm going to test. Okay, so those dots are a little bigger than I want. So I'm going to touch my brush to my paper towel and just take out a little bit of moisture. And I'm going to test again. Okay, let's give this a try. All right, I'm going to put the palette down, and I'm just going to come over this and tap my finger. Now you want your background to be dry before you do this, and I'll show you why. I'm actually going to use 2 fingers like this. Now I happen to love snow, so I'm going to put quite a bit. You can put as little or as much as you'd like. Definitely want to get it all down here in the snow on these big snowflakes. Now, definitely want some on the birds, but this is why I say to have your painting dry first, There's a couple of splotches here. Let's see, I want it everywhere. This is a really, really snowy day. So much fun. Okay, so there's some big dots that I really don't want on my birds. So I'm going to come back in with my nice round, and it's just clean and moist, and I'm going to take away some of those big splotches. I might even take this one. Whoops, there was some red that was wet there, so I need to get that up and out of there. Okay. Again, I'll just touch my paper towel there and blot. Okay, so if there was some, like maybe I don't want quite this many big ones on the bird's body, so I just want to remove them with a little bit of a wet brush. And the good news is you can always come back in and actually strategically place a few, you know, where you want them. That way you can control. I want a little bit on my birds. I just don't want them to kind of take over and look like another eye or something. All right. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to tell you about was the edge. So when I'm painting, I will either take my design around the edge or decide to paint my edge another color. This one I've done in black all around the edge, and I really like that. It kind of almost gives it a frame. If you're going to paint it the same color, I would bring my same background colors around the edges while I'm painting the design, like I showed you here, and angle it the way it would go if it were actually growing up and around. Okay, I just noticed one other snowflake here that's a little bigger than I'd like. Okay. If you're going to do it black, this is my suggestion. Let your painting dry completely, preferably at least overnight, because sometimes you think your paint is dry, but then when you go to put the varnish on, you'll end up smudging. Ask me how I know. I won't call it impatience, but I'll call it excitement in wanting to get the project done. I've rushed the varnish and ended up smearing something, and it's very disappointing and a little more difficult to fix. So let it dry good. Use the water-based varnish of your choice. You can get it in the craft stores. Most of the paint brands make them, and you can get either matte, satin, or gloss. I enjoy the gloss. The only thing with the gloss is if you're going to photograph your art, you want to photograph it before you put your gloss, because the gloss can sometimes make it challenging for photographing. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to paint my edge, and I'm going to show you how to paint the edges in a future tutorial. But here is today's finished design. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and have a wonderful day.